So just some updates in May 2025 about the Peter Pig science fiction project called The Company Rules, or TCR. Now, one aspect of the game is that a counter with figures on it moves around the edge of the table. The 28 squares around the table, because it's a 5x3 table in 6-inch squares. When it's gone all the way around the table, the game is over, so players can see the game progression. It's a nice little piece on the table and adds to the visual. Now, this is the mark that moves around the table, and every turn it's a dice take 2 spots. So it could be actually -1 square, or it could be 0 squares, or 1, 2, 3, 4. That's what goes around the table. So that's the count that moves around the table. It's for visuals rather than, it doesn't fight or anything. The place it's going to is this new item called the Sanctuary. Made of resin piece, it's solid resin, and it's going to be a sanctuary, so it's like a gateway for technicians to get away. Here they go. That gives you an idea of the size of it. So this stays stationary, this moves, there are 28 squares around the table, a dice take 2 spots, and that's how that works. That's the sanctuary, and the technicians make you run for it. Now, other bits and pieces is a turret. A new thing we're trying in the rules is defense turrets. They're not going to be very effective, and they'll be stationary, of course. Now, a little resin item here. So there's the gun type thing there in a slot so it can rotate, etc. It's a one-piece item to keep the price down. They come in packs of 4, and in the game they're laid out in a row. So each row of the table, or the column of the table, is 6 squares, and I choose one of those and set the turrets up in that, 1 per square. Now I painted this one in a red with some yellow dry brush, and just to look nice. Being sci-fi, we can enjoy ourselves with the colours. There's the turret, alongside some figures. There, you get the idea of the height of it. It's not massive, but the idea is on the table. Now, next thing, I've just painted some new figures for a game we're doing, and these are legionary figures. In TCR, or the company rules, there are 3 qualities of troops. The basic one is auxiliaries, and they're 3 figures on a base. Here are some auxiliaries. There you go. 3 per base. The middle level is legionaries, using a Roman theme of 2 per base. And the top level of troops is Praetorians, which is 1 per base. Although they're in 3 levels, they're not equally spaced apart. So, auxiliaries are okay, legionaries are better, but these Praetorians are much, much better. Twice or 3 times as good. So there's a huge leap. Because a Praetorian in the game isn't slowed down by scenery, can launch mines, can launch blockers, can do all sorts of things, and has defense values, so armor deflection, whereas the others have very little of that. So this is far, far better. However, in the game, these are 35 points each. 35 points each. Whereas an auxiliary here, I think they're about 12 points in the playtesting rounds. They're much, much cheaper. They're not that good, though, but they're much, much cheaper, and they do things by sheer quantity. Now, what I've been painting at the moment is I've done some legionaries. Now, I've done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. There's about 11 different forces in the game, and this number of legionaries, 11 bases, will cover any or all of them. So a player can buy some Praetorians, some legionaries, and some auxiliaries. Different forces have different limits. So some forces can have no Praetorians at all. Some forces can have no auxiliaries. And of course, some forces can have no legionaries. Typically, players are allowed up to about 3 Praetorians. They're up to about 6 legionaries, and up to about 12 or so of these. However, a typical force will only give you about 8 bases in total. So typically you might have 1 Praetorian, 5 legionaries, and 3 auxiliaries. The idea being that obviously these are advanced in the future science fiction, so you don't need to have things like tanks and cars and pickup trucks and things. They're much better than all those things. So this chap here is inside the carapace, be a little figure inside there. You have to imagine that. This is faster than the tank, more powerful than the tank, more mobile than the tank, more recoverable than the tank, etc., etc. So you don't need tanks with huge long guns and that sort of thing. Now that means it's a very affordable game. Anyway, that's an update on TCR, the company rules. This is May 2025. Thank you. Just talk about the colours used in TCR, the colours. Now, being science fiction is a bit of fun. So instead of using green cloth or green trees and some other colours, I've chosen as my main terrain or scenery colour blue, because blue paint's easy to get hold of, it dry brushes nicely, and it's quite pleasing to the eye. So there's blue. I've used blue for the bases as well of the troops. Once again, it's easy to put on. Blue is a nice easy colour, looks nice, and it dry brushes really well. Hence why the blue. Now a whole cloth of blue is quite tricky, so I've got a sort of a bluey greeny cloth. But it's nice making the effort so the game looks nice. And these particular figures I've done in nice bright colours. Because they've got sort of like a plate Wars of the Roses type armour, I've used a dry brush to bring out the joints in the equipment. And the actual equipment I've done in a metallic bluey colour and stuff like that. Being legionaries, he's got some sort of jetpack thing on the back. So there's the idea of colours. But the science fiction is just a chance, because I usually play a lot of historicals. Here's a chance to have something which is a bit more colourful and just enjoyable, hence the blue. So you sit on there and they look quite nice. That's colours in TCR.